Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks, bringing you the latest news from Taiwan. I'm Betty Chen.
I'm Rath Wang. Today we talk about President Tsai Ing-wen's transit in the United States. She'll be meeting with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, while former President Ma Ying-jeou is in China. What do these trips mean for Taiwan and the region's security?
Joining us are Leonard Zhao, adjunct professor at National Tsinghua University and former Taiwan ambassador to the Kingdom of Eswatini. Stephen Tan, Managing Director of the International Policy Advisory Group, and Tang Shaocheng, National Zhengzhi University Institute of International Relations Professor. Good to see you back, Ambassador and Dr. Tan, and a warm welcome to Professor Tang.
We also hear later from Miles Yu, former top China policy advisor to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He is currently director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute, where President Tsai will be speaking. Likely to be one of President Tsai's last transits to the U.S. before her term ends. Ambassador, what do you think is the significance of this trip?
Well, the official visits to our diplomatic allies have become a common practice by our president in the past decades, either KMTs or DPP. So having said that, in terms of the formality, President Tsai's visit this time around is nothing out of ordinary. But in terms of the timing, it's rather meaningful and crucial, because we know that recently, when we just lost Honduras diplomatically. So at this point of time, President Tsai's visit there will definitely consolidate and also strengthen our diplomatic ties with two remaining diplomatic allies in Central America, namely Guatemala and Belize. That is a very good timing. And then secondly, I think that because the transit visit to U.S. is always it's a must.
You're saying it's been a long-standing position.
That's right. Because given our diplomatic, the reality, our presidents, whenever he or she visiting some Central American diplomatic allies, definitely they will try to use the opportunity to stop over, so-called transit, to stop over in the U.S. for some other, the communications with our American partners. And I think so in this regard, the transit visit to U.S. that can enable President Tsai to reinvigorate and further deepen our current communications with the United States. And so I think at these 2 points, this visit is very well-timed and very appropriate and very helpful.
So, Ambassador, you talk about the significance of the transit in the U.S. So my question now is for Professor. Is Tsai also paving the way for the transit for the upcoming visit by Vice President William Lai, who would also pay the visit to the U.S.? What do you think of that?
Mostly the statement or the politicians, they have 3 layers of their interest. Firstly, for themselves, and secondly, for the party, and thirdly, for the state. Yeah, but with different emphases. And this time, as the ambassador just mentioned, President Tsai Ing-wen will visit our allies, diplomatic allies, and then the United States, the transit United States. So in the 3 layers, for instance, for the sake of President Tsai Ing-wen herself, is to find or to polish her position in the history of Taiwan. Yeah? And secondly, for the party, as you just mentioned, it's a kind of boost of the relationship between Taiwan and the United States, and build the bridge for William Tsai to visit the election, and visit. And thirdly, for the state, in the state level, it is a very good trip and significant trip to boost the relationship between Taiwan and the United States. The United States, for most of the countries of the world, the United States is the single and most important player in the international politics. So that's why it is also so significant, even vital, for the interest of Taiwan. So I think the visit or the transit of President Tsai is very significant.
Dr. Tan, how much of this do you feel will actually boost the ruling party for their chances next year?
Well, I think I agree with Ambassador that this visit is nothing out of ordinary. It has been, a good number of times before by herself and her predecessors. So this is nothing out of ordinary. And I wouldn't even categorize her visit as to boost the relationship between Taiwan and U.S. I think it would be more of a reflection of a strong relationship between the two countries. Number three, I wouldn't necessarily put her visit in a way that it's going to pave the way for Vice President Lai Ching-te. I think Vice President Lai Ching-te will be visiting or make his overseas trip sometime maybe later this year. But I don't think he needs President Tsai to pave the way for his visit. In terms of, Ralph, what you just mentioned, whether or not it will help DPP's upcoming general election here in Taiwan, I don't think there is a direct correlation between her trip on one hand and the election forecast domestically on the other. I think, as I just pointed out, that this is a reflection of a very strong and solid relationship between Taiwan and the United States. And what the President Tsai has been doing, as you can see on the screen, her visit to the United States is not precedented, and even the timing, I think, it can be there's no better time than this to make a visit in the first half of the year. And I do believe that there will be subsequent visits by President Tsai before end of her tenure by May 20th next year.
Well, if I may add up, if you don't mind, that in terms of the help, how much Tsai's visit can bring to William Lai, I think at least that Tsai is, after all, the current chair of the DPP, the ruling party, and Lai is her current deputy. So I think Tsai Ing-wen will be the perfect position this time in the U.S. to answer any questions the U.S. might be going to ask.
Although I think
about,
the current chair now is actually Lai Ching-te.
Because of the laws of the local elections.
That's right. Because the United States, as I was told, that a lot of Americans they're getting they know that Lai Ching-te is becoming the appointed running for the presidency, but a lot of Americans remain uncertain about Lai's policy in many regards, many respects. The cross-strait and some other international relations. So at this time, Tsai, when she was there, she will be facing some questions. I think definitely some questions from the American counterparts, and she will be in a perfect position to answer any questions that the U.S. might have on Lai.
Master, I think there have been lots of noises from, the West or even media around here in Asia saying that Lai Ching-te is a bit more pro-independence. Do you feel that her trip can actually calm down that bit of concern?
Depending on the Q&A between the Americans and President Tsai this time during her visit there, I think Vice President Tsai, he's not in a comfortable position to answer answer any doubt. I think definitely I would rather give him the benefit of the doubt that I don't think he will be as extreme pro-independent as he has been rumored or expected that way. Definitely, I think that any politician will be in a position to keep changing, or keep them fine-tuned about his or her policy in many respects. I think that goes across the world.
To meet the current trends or
that's right. I think
political situations.
That's right.
Just let me add on something real quick. I don't think Vice President Lai Ching-te's position or his stance, both in terms of his stance in Taiwan and with the cross-strait relations, or his international view and perspective, are anything different from President Tsai. And I think the international community is fully aware of that, and it's getting to know better and better as the day goes by. And I don't think it necessarily take President Tsai to go to the international community to explain what the continuation of the ruling party's platform and policies are. And I think, number one, that speaks for itself. Number two, I think that's very clear that VP Lai's stance is no different from President Tsai.
But Dr. Tan, how do you address the concerns that say Lai Ching-te is actually an independence supporter, which he publicly mentioned, saying that he's a practical independence fighter?
Right. And I think that, if I understand correctly, he stated by himself repeatedly, and that is no different from the status quo, meaning that Taiwan is a de facto independent country, had its own sovereignty since 1911, and then it's been in Taiwan since 1949, and nothing has been changed and nothing will be changed.
Which doesn't mean changing the Republic of China.
Right, so literally it's a status quo. And it's a status quo in a dynamic way, but it will not involve in any change in the structure of this country, both in terms of the constitution and in terms of the legal infrastructure. So basically, I don't see from his repeated remarks in the various different occasions, I don't see any deviation.
Well,
at all
as the saying goes, when you're an outsider, you can think whatever you want to think. You can say whatever you want to say. But when you become an insider, well, there's a certain limit.
So you're saying it's important for the foreign countries to know that position, that President Tsai goes there to explain it?
Well, I agree that what Stephen said, that a person, she's visiting on her own. She's not it's not representative of William Lai in this regard. But maybe privately, maybe some question might be leading to something about the upcoming electoral campaign by the DPP, and for your designate William Lai. What do you think personally? I think it's kind of personal chat. Maybe she will touch slightly, but I think in terms of the official positions, William Lai, that will be his job to try to diffuse this kind of any possible misconception or misperception.
Probably at this moment, it's a bit too early to tell what they're going to talk about, right?
That remains to be seen.
Exactly. So now I would like to direct our question to Professor. A highlight of Tsai's U.S. transit is her meeting with Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. And some people see it as an olive branch to China because the meeting does not take place in Taiwan, but it's taking place in the U.S. How do you expect China to respond to the meeting?
China has already responded. By Honduras, because the way that China treats Taiwan is very meticulous. For instance, by the Pelosi instance, there was a military drill around the Taiwan island, but this time the drill is a little bit far away in the South China Sea, But the Honduras case is a warning to Lai Ching-te, because it's on the day that he registered to run the presidency, so exactly on that time. So it is a kind of warning for him and also for President Tsai. So I would say the Honduras case will not hurt the Taiwanese people, but the military drills is different. So military drills is actually more harming or do much more harm to Taiwan as the Honduras case. So that's why I have just mentioned this meticulous way of doing things, to just pinpoint the object that the Beijing wants to oppose, but not the whole Taiwanese people. That's the difference. So I would say both President Tsai and Lai Ching-te, they got the lessons. So if President Tsai will meet with McCarthy, that will be a kind of challenge or kind of provocation that Beijing will interpret it. So I would suggest that the speech that President Tsai will deliver in the Reagan library could maybe moderate the situation if she meets with McCarthy. Yeah. So, but by that time, this time, the situation will not be so delicate as the Pelosi case. Yeah. A couple of months ago. So I would say this time could be a very not I would say not unpeaceful process for her to transit to the United States.
Dr. Tan, some people say that last time the military drills were actually an opportunity for China to practice its capabilities around the Taiwan island. Do you feel that it will use this as an excuse this time as well?
Well, I think the situations are very different now. Last time it was, in the summer last year, it was before the 20th Party Congress in China. And I think now Xi Jinping is in full power, and then there's a brand new dynamic relations between the United States and China, but more so between China and the rest of the world. I don't think it has never been the provocation at our end. We have never provoked China. Even Nancy Pelosi's visit last year, it was not a provocation. This time, President Tsai Ing-wen's scheduled visit with Kevin McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy in California, is again not a provocation. And China's been doing drills all the time. Last time was the Taiwan Strait, this time South China Sea, and then you can see all over the places in the whole world. And it's not a surprise to us, but I don't think we should react in a way that it's not a provocation per se. So I don't see a reason for us at our end to quote unquote to tone down in order not to see the further drills or exercise by China, because PLA has been doing this all the time. But I do agree that this time it may not be escalated that much as compared with last year, not mainly because of the visit will be in the United States, not in Taiwan. I don't think that's the reason. I think the changing circumstances internationally, geopolitically, between China and the United States, and after Xi Jinping's third term, after the 20th Party Congress, I think that will be the driving factors of not as escalated as you can see last summer.
So you're saying it's because he consolidated power?
Well, that's the main reason, and also China's still dealing with issues internationally and also domestically, and this is nothing new to China. And as I just pointed out, that President of Taiwan's visit to the United States in transit and meeting with the politicians of the United States, nothing new, nothing out of extraordinary.
It's been going on for 3 decades.
As Ambassador just pointed out correctly, nothing has changed.
Right, but we just lost another diplomatic ally, Honduras, and a lot of people in Taiwan are actually asking the question, why do we still need to spend so many resources on keeping the diplomatic allies? Ambassador, as a former ambassador to one of our allies, what do you say about the importance or significance of keeping these allies?
Well, it calls for a long talk and a long explanation about how and why we should keep the contact, keep the current diplomatic allies. As many, well, maybe now it used to be 14, and now it's turned on to 13. When I first got to Africa, there were some 7 or 6 diplomatic allies in Africa, and now there's only one left. Remember, Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, that happened to be my turf. Okay, so I feel at this point, sadly, I feel proud of my my contribution.
The last standing country.
Right.
Well,
in
I
Africa.
hope that can keep staying there as long as possible. But in terms of your, in response to your question, I think we should seriously and sincerely, I think we should keep the diplomatic allies as many as possible, because it's not a matter of how much money we spend, how much resource we should spend in the diplomatic allies. I don't want to say any more than that. When I was in Eswatini, I sensed that. So I was probably one of the most stingy, ambassadors, who always keeps, in mind that how can I strike a balance between keeping our diplomatic, allies on hold, and then also how can we spend the economic and the financial budget, okay, to use the what is necessary to be used. That I didn't spend any unnecessary money for spending, but I still keep a very good friendship with His Majesty the King, as you know very well. And so keeping balance between our diplomatic necessity and the financial balance in Taiwan, that's a tough job. It's a big task. So I think this is I like to call our fellow Taiwanese people that we should provide a different mindset. We need some of the diplomatic friends. Like if I may put it this way, give you an analogy. When you're in the court, okay, for a criminal case, we need some evidence. Any plaintiffs and the defendants, I think we need some evidence, some evidence to support. I'm innocent. We're decent. We're good guys. Not as convicted. We're not indicted. We're not convicted. But so we need some with some friends to prove our existence, our decency, and our good behavior. So I think these are diplomatic friends in the world community, let alone some major international organizations, the United Nations, some other. So I think we need these friends, no matter how powerful, how wealthy they are. We're in need of these friends.
We need these witnesses,
right? Yeah, to prove Taiwan's existence and also Taiwan's prosperity. Taiwan's existence in the world is a pride to humankind these days. Taiwan. So I think I was reminded many years ago when I was in Washington, I witnessed the one unforgettable, thing that New York Times editorial entitled, quite an impressive one, Taiwan, too big to be ignored. So I think we need to be heard, need to be seen by our international friends, particularly those diplomatic. They are officially, legally, status to prove our existence.
Part of the UN.
Part of the UN, of course. Yeah,
Professor, the ambassador mentioned this delicate balance, but how much do you feel that keeping these allies, and in terms of racing with China with dollar diplomacy, is it worth it?
According to the Montevideo Convention of the Rights and Duties of the States in the year 1933, it stipulates very clearly that a state must have population, must have the territory, and must have a government, and still the ability to conduct its relationship with the other countries. That means recognition. Yeah. So it's one of the polar of the existence of a state. It's very, very essential.
Though some say allies
every state of the world.
Allies are actually a privilege, not actually a right. So statehood actually doesn't include diplomatic allies. It includes sovereignty in terms of territory, in terms of having a government and military. What do you say to people who say that?
That depends on de facto or de jure, the differences. De facto, we have not so much diplomatic allies, but de jure, de facto we have it's the opposite. De facto we have, but de jure. It's only now how much?
13.
13 allies.
Yeah? 13 official allies, diplomatic allies. So that depends on how much weight that you put on the de facto aspect or de jure aspect of the recognition. Yeah. So I mean, normally we have to have some of the diplomatic allies to sustain as a independent state. Yeah.
So a quick-
otherwise
Sorry.
it will be difficult.
Sorry to interrupt, but a quick question to Dr. Tan. Now, our president goes to the United States only under the name of transit because we're visiting the official diplomatic allies. Do you think that in the future, Taiwan's president can directly pay a state visit to the U.S., not going through any diplomatic allies?
Right. I don't know. I hope so, but I think we have to face the reality. We have to be very pragmatic and practical. This has been the routine. This has been the pre-existing practice for years, for decades, and I don't see an apparent need or desire to make such a drastic change, because I mentioned that earlier, that I think what we need to do and what we enjoy having is the substantive relationship between Taiwan and the United States and between Taiwan and the rest of the world. Symbolism is great. Symbolism is great in a way that sometimes symbol represents substance. But when you have a symbolic representation and some of the symbols, and that reflects the substance, what we really need to be driving at is still the substantive relationship that we have. And so getting back to your question, Betty, I don't see I don't see a need at this point that we're going to put lots of efforts to drive to that, to reinforce the symbolism, as right now we have the substance.
Well, diplomacy or international relations is a matter of art. As a matter of fact, given my previous experience in Washington, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that this quote-unquote transit visit is a result of certain long-term negotiations under the table between the U.S. and Taiwan. And certainly, plus China, when the trilateral relations was in a very smooth and balanced situation many years ago. So it's not an easy task. But we worked out this mutually acceptable form. So transit visit, that can mediate the impact, because after the diplomatic breakup between U.S. and Taiwan, so how can our leaders, our city officials, that requires some bilateral communication contacts. But without a visit, how can we conduct a contact? So then we work out this it's a very formula. It's a workable formula. Now, back to your question. Of course, this is a hypothetical question, but I think any kind of contact between the U.S. and Taiwan, in terms of the visits, exchange of the opinions, or some high-level talks, that will certainly require some tacit understanding between the two countries. Maybe, I hate to use the word, I have to say this, plus China, some tacit understanding. So I think always believe that when I was back in the 1980s, in the last century, under our then president, then the ambassador Fred Chen Fu, always said that only the balanced trilateral relation, equal distance trilateral relation between U.S., Taiwan, and China, that will serve the best scenario.
So, Ambassador, there is the Taiwan Travel Act that was passed a few years ago. How do you think that could kind of come into this dynamic?
Well, I don't know if I should answer the question as honestly as I can. That was the result. That's the work of the sense of the Congress. All right. I used to be in charge of the Congressional Liaison Office in Washington, D.C. I would like to say honestly that we appreciate the congressmen and senators' kindness in passing all these resolutions, helping Taiwan and helping the relation between our two peoples. I don't think we should take this serious, because the sense of Congress is not binding. All depending on the sincerity and sense of seriousness of the executive branch, namely White House, NSC, and State Department, to execute that. So execution is the name of the game, not the sense of the Congress, not the kindness.
So all in all, you're saying that we need a combination of American allies with the U.S. so that the presidents of Taiwan can transit.
Oh, that's a very common, but it's a hypothetical question. Let's hope that day won't come. We still continue the current way of doing that.
Right. So moving on to what President Tsai's and former President Ma's trip mean for Taiwan-U.S.-China relations. Let's hear from Miles Yu.
Miles, we're seeing Ma Ying-jeou, the former president of Taiwan, visiting China, which coincides with President Tsai Ing-wen's visit?
Both Ma Ying-jeou and President Tsai have said repeatedly that the future of Taiwan is in the hands of Taiwanese people, because that would distinguish China from Taiwan, because the future of a democracy is really from the voice and the will of the people. So if that's the case, and then I'm not terribly worried about those sort of ceremonial visits for Ma Ying-jeou to mainland China. And I hope that he will still hold on to his belief that Taiwan's future lies within the Taiwanese people. After all, he was the president of Taiwan for a number of years. Secondly, I also hope that his visit to China will highlight the fundamental differences between the two political systems. Ultimately, and I think the issue between mainland China and Taiwan is not really about who belongs to whom. It's really about what kind of political systems that people on both sides would choose. And I think the answer from Taiwanese people is very clear. They do not want to be reunited with a regime that's under one-party dictatorship. So, and I also hope that Mr. Ma's visit to China will also educate a lot of people in Taiwan as well, because after all, this is a pretty extraordinary move, particularly considering the timing. If it's a election maneuver, and then the former president should make it clear, if it's up for some kind of political negotiation, that I think that Mr. Ma should absolutely be transparent and be honest with the Taiwanese people.
In terms of President Tsai's U.S. transit, do you feel that will further strengthen ties with the U.S.?
How many people and who President Tsai will meet in the United States during her transit to Latin America is not nearly as important as the sheer fact that Taiwan is becoming far more popular in the hearts and minds of American people than China. As a matter of fact, the recent popular poll conducted by Gallup indicates that only 15% of Americans had a positive feeling about China. 85% of Americans had a very negative view of China. That is remarkable. I mean, so I think I haven't seen recent polls, but it's a bipartisan national feeling that people in Taiwan deserve American friendship and support. And you can see that from not only the executive branch, but also, most importantly, from the legislative branch, the Congress, and all the major industries and think tanks, university and colleges. So Taiwanese should be very proud of themselves for what they have come a few decades, right? 30, 40 years. Taiwanese people have developed a miracle that is pretty amazing. Not only you have vibrant democracy, you have the tremendous economic success, and your GDP per capita is number one in East Asia. That is basically a pretty amazing accomplishment. Your public service and your international stance, you have lived with dignity and with good citizenship. And I think, so when President Tsai transits the United States, it's a great opportunity to celebrate not only the U.S.-Taiwanese friendship, but also the incredible accomplishment of the people in Taiwan.
While President Tsai is in the Americas, let's turn back to the region on former President Ma's visit to China. Dr. Chan, what do you believe Taiwanese voters will take this?
Well, I think it all depends on what he said or what he's going to say or what he missed out. This is the day, I think this is the day 3 of former President Ma's visit to China. We're watching closely. I think the people in Taiwan are watching all very closely on what he's going to say or what he's not going to say, particularly in meetings, informal meetings with the Chinese ministers or the Chinese officials. China's rhetorics have always been that one China and the 92 consensus under one China, and against any forms of Taiwan independence by China's definition, remaining the status quo, having the name of Republic of China, where Republic of China, Taiwan, is under the Chinese definition, independence. So I think what President Ma's going to say, or what he's going to miss out in front of the officials in the formal meetings, would be the dictating factors of what Taiwanese people or Taiwanese voters view how President Ma is performing, and that will reflect back to voters' view and perspectives on the party that President Ma is affiliated with. KMT, President Ma used to be the chairman, and he served as 8-year president. And whether or not people's view on President Ma's visit is going to reflect, and to what extent it's going to reflect on people's view and perspective on KMT, I think it's yet to be determined, but we'll see in the next couple of days.
And he's still very influential in the party. Professor, what do you think? Yeah.
I think the trip from former President Ma Ying-jeou to mainland China, we call it in Chinese 忍辱负重. That means endure humiliation and critics. You know, the government and the ruling party has strong critics on his trip. Yeah, and he has expressed himself as the former president of the ROC, and also ROC is also in his mouth. Yeah? And not only that, he has mentioned in his statement in Sun Yat-sen's memorial 5 times the grounding father of the ROC, Dr. Sun Yat-sen.
Do you think
that
that's
means,
enough? Do you think that's enough? Like 5 times, do you think that's enough? Or
more or less
statements?
Better than nothing.
Professor, there's also news that he
that
said
means the reset of the relationship between the ROC and the PRC is incoming.
Well, what do you say to when he said the president of that? Because that was reported in all the media in Taiwan, saying that he stopped short of saying the ROC, but said he was president of that.
Of what? Of ROC. Yeah.
But he
that means,
didn't say it out. He didn't blurt out the word.
Many critics of him has emphasized that they're not use the words of the PRs, of the ROC and the president and so on. But he did. Yeah, he really did. So that's why I would say it's kind of 忍辱负重. That means to endure humiliation and critics, but still, he has reached his goal.
Yesterday, when former President Ma visited Dr. Sun Yat-sen's Memorial Park, he did mention a few words about the president and the Republic of China, and it's been 112 years and so on and so forth. But you have to know that it has all been the practice that when the Taiwanese dignitaries and officials and former officials visiting the Dr. Sun Yat-sen's Memorial Park in Nanjing, it has already been categorized as the Republic of China special zone. China tolerated, to a certain extent, the mentioning of Republic of China or the presidency or the terms that reflected Mingguo, the Republic of China, only in that special zone. What we are seeing is that when he get out of that comfort zone of the Dr. Sun Yat-sen's Memorial Hall in Nanjing, when he officially meet with the officials in the meeting as such, whether or not he's going to say that openly. If it's going to say that openly in front of the Chinese officials, when China mentions that 92 consensus on a one China policy, no independence in any form, and then he repeatedly that I'm the president of the Republic of China, Taiwan, and we've been here for 112 years, so on and so forth. We're an independent sovereign state, and that counts. And that is what the true presidency and the leader's going to do is going to be. And
so you're saying if he says that,
I don't know.
We'll
see that
when he comes back.
Absolutely, if it says that, and I think the Brook Camp voters and the KMT leadership will be so happy that he says that. But we'll see whether he's going to mention.
So, Ambassador, what do you think of this trip? Will this help the KMT or not?
I would like to make a comment from another perspective. I think Ma's visit to China had two upsides, two positive impacts and two negative ones. Okay, to be fair with him. On the positive side, first, I think this visit has brought about a lot of publicity from the international media, such such as the Washington Post, the Guardian, and the CNN, to name a few. International publicity can certainly brought the whole world, to a renewed attention to Taiwan's existence. That's good for our, the publicity, for the country's publicity. The number one. Number two positive impact is that certainly, to be honest with all the concern that he is bringing, the youth people delegation,
Students,
and then paying the tribute to his ancestors who are buried there. And also, I think this is good for a cultural education contact between both sides of the strait. I think that's a good impact. But for the negative, for the downsides, I think first, his words upon landing, arriving in Shanghai. I read the news this morning. Well, I just got back to Taiwan late last night. I read the report that he said that, I quote, "We are all Chinese, ethnically." Well, I agree with him that in terms of the ethnicity, he's right, but not in terms of the nationality, rather in nationality. But this will be vulnerable to some of the Taiwanese youth misunderstanding and objection and some negative.
Right, because he did use the word nationality.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So I think this is not politically, hardly politically wise words from a former head of state. In this regard, I would be doubtful that it will give some good impact to the KMT's electoral campaign. People say, okay, all the KMT, but they're saying we're like that, the Chinese. But still, because this, whether Chinese or Taiwanese, we haven't reached the national consensus yet. So I think that's the first negative, unfortunately. And secondly, the timing for this visit coincide with the, with the Honduras breakup, and also with the military drill. Okay. Whatever you want to excuse, because of course, okay, Tsai Ing-wen's, this is Tsai Ing-wen's visit, the PRC's military drill comes after because of retaliation to Tsai Ing-wen's visit to U.S. Okay, I would like to explain that Tsai Ing-wen's visit, of course, but even without Tsai Ing-wen's visit to U.S., still, the PLA will have this military drill. So I think we shouldn't blame the Tsai Ing-wen for this. Also, but the timing but still embarrassing moment when the Honduras just lost Honduras, and also the military drill is still going on. That will last for a few days.
Right.
And this moment, Ma Ying-jeou is visiting China. So whatever the agenda you have in mind, however nice and well meant. But still a little embarrassing because that would give the people a wrong interpretation, wrong impression, and that would not be helpful, if not detrimental, to the KMT's electoral campaign.
Professor,
Yes.
the ambassador mentioned timing in terms of it being peculiar. Do you feel this is a deliberate attempt from China to divide Taiwan?
From China.
Because
I think
of,
it's deliberate from Tsai Ing-wen.
because Xi Jinping actually signed off on the trip so that he
I
would
will
be able to
say,
go.
I will interpret it, the coincidence of these two trips between the two leaders. President Tsai Ing-wen visit or transit to the United States has no actually due fix. Due fix means, for instance, you want to join an inauguration of a president from our allies. So that means the time must be fixed. But for Ma Ying-jeou, Ma Ying-jeou wants to pay respect to his ancestry. So the due is fixed. That means he has to do it around the Qingming time, around the ancestral worship time.
The tomb
So,
sweeping.
Yeah,
so,
Sweeping Festival.
so for Ma Ying-jeou, it has not so much room of maneuver, other than a very fixed time. But for Tsai Ing-wen, it's different. And from the other side, Tsai Ing-wen must know, through many channels and from the information and intelligence, what Ma Ying-jeou has in mind, or Ma Ying-jeou has planned, but not vice versa. Yeah? So that's why I would say that President Tsai Ing-wen tried to jeopardize the trip or the impact of Ma Ying-jeou to the mainland, not the opposite. Yeah?
With all due respect, I totally disagree with Professor Tom. Number one, President Tsai or any president of Taiwan have the routine of visiting the diplomatic allies and then in transit in the United States repeatedly. And President Tsai, because of COVID, there are a couple of years that she's been away from the overseas trips. This is the first one. And then her aides, folks in her circle reiterated that it will be multiple visits, from now to toward the end of her tenure in March 2024. So this will be the first trip. There will be subsequent trips. So first half of the year is the better timing. Number two, there were rumors that President Ma Ying-jeou wanted to visit China so badly because of COVID. He cannot make it. In the beginning of this year, and one of her top aides, Xiao Zhenxu visited Beijing, and it was originally proposed to be the second half of the year or even next year, but China suggested, quote unquote, that should visit earlier.
Well, what's behind this determination from Ma?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's behind that. But I think President Ma wanted this very badly.
Betty used to be his interpreter. Maybe share some inside story.
Sorry, I don't.
and China really wanted President Ma to be visiting China as early as possible. So I would think I tend to believe that the coincidence of President Tsai Ing-wen's visit to the United States and President Ma's visit to China has been an outcome of a very skillful maneuver and suggestions, if you wish, by China in terms of the timing and all that. I don't know the rationales behind, but I have reason to believe that there is a very skillful maneuver and the plannings, and if you want to, use the lesser, tone down the word, suggestions, which former President Ma Ying-jeou, happily took it, and it was a coincidence, but it's not necessarily a coincidence. But now you see the international media coverage of comparing the former president visited China and the current president visited or in transit to the United States as a reflection or comparison as to how divided this country is, and then to see the effect and outcome and the impact of those visits.
Let us know how you think China will react to President Tsai's U.S. transit in our comments section. If you like our shows, please hit subscribe to Taiwan Talks at 2023 on YouTube.
Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.